What if speaking up got you suspended from school? One black teen answered a science question too well. Instead of recognition, he got punished for showing off. They thought that would silence him. But what happened next? Harvard called him a genius. This isn't just a story about school. It's about resilience, quiet strength, and proving your worth when no one else will. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell. Every single click gives us the motivation to keep sharing more voices that matter. Jalen Brooks always knew there were two versions of himself. There was the quiet, hoodie-wearing black teen who kept his head down in the hallways of Milstone High School in rural Alabama. The one teachers barely noticed unless they were marking tardies or handing out detention slips. And then, there was the version that came alive late at night, sitting cross-legged on his bedroom floor, laptop open, chalkboard crammed with messy equations, eyes burning from hours of research. The Jalen who stayed up decoding quantum mechanics papers, tinkering with AI models and running simulations most college freshmen would struggle to grasp. But no one at school knew that Jalen, because every time he tried to speak up, every time he answered questions too fast or offered explanations that went beyond the textbook, the looks started. The raised eyebrows, the whispers, and worst of all, the teachers who took offense, especially Principal Garrett. Mr. Garrett was old school, the type of administrator who believed kids should know their place and stick to the curriculum. For students like Jalen, quiet, smart, and black, that place was usually at the back of the classroom, not at the front, not raising hands, not correcting teachers. But Jalen couldn't help it. His brain worked fast. Always had. Especially in Mr. Connor's advanced physics class. One Thursday afternoon, everything changed. The class was covering basic wave functions. Mr. Connors, pacing at the front, scribbled a simplified equation on the board, a version Jalen immediately recognized as outdated. Jalen's hand shot up. "Actually," he said carefully, "that formula doesn't account for particle duality under—" Before he could finish, Mr. Connors cut him off. "Jalen," he said sharply, "this is high school physics. Not graduate school. Let's stick to the lesson." Laughter rippled across the room. Jalen's face burned, but he couldn't ignore the mistake. So later, after class, he stayed behind and politely handed Mr. Connors a printout, a peer-reviewed journal article showing the correction. Instead of gratitude, Mr. Connors frowned. "You need to watch your tone," he said coldly. "No one likes a show-off." Jalen blinked. "I wasn't. That's enough," Mr. Connors snapped, waving him out the door. The next morning, Jalen was called to the principal's office. He sat stiffly in the cracked vinyl chair across from Principal Garrett, hands clasped, trying to control the shaking in his knees. Principal Garrett didn't waste time. "I've had multiple teachers raise concerns about your attitude," he began. "You're disrupting class discussions, undermining staff authority." Jalen's mouth went dry. "What?" he whispered. "We're suspending you for 3 days," Garrett continued, flipping through a thin file folder that Jalen knew was mostly empty. "Consider it time to reflect on your behavior." Jalen's heart sank. A suspension? For answering questions? For offering help? As he left the office, walking past the rows of faded motivational posters and trophy cases filled with dusty awards from decades past, he felt something crack inside him. Not anger, not even sadness, just disbelief. That night, as his mom read the suspension notice at the kitchen table, her hands trembled. But she said nothing, just stared at him with tired, heartbroken eyes. Jalen went back to his room, opened his laptop, and did the only thing he knew how to do. He built. The glow of Jalen's laptop lit up the dark room like a small, defiant sun. He barely noticed the time as he typed. Lines of Python, TensorFlow models, datasets scraped from open research repositories, all stitched together with the precision only sleep-deprived genius could manage. If the school thought they could silence him, fine. He'd just build something they couldn't ignore. For months, Jalen had been tinkering with an idea in secret, an AI-powered anomaly detection system for gravitational wave patterns, an area of research he'd stumbled onto while reading about the LIGO Observatory. It started as curiosity. Now, it felt like survival. He stayed up until 3 a.m., refining the neural network structure, feeding it simulated data. He worked on his second-hand Chromebook, fighting lag and storage issues. The school's outdated Wi-Fi couldn't handle his bandwidth needs, so he hotspotted from his phone, burning through prepaid data like oxygen. By Friday, the first test run worked, not perfectly, but enough. Jalen sat back in his chair, staring at the results scrolling across the screen. This wasn't just a science fair project, this was publishable. But still, the sting of suspension gnawed at him. He scrolled through Twitter, half distracted, until a pinned tweet caught his eye. Harvard Youth STEM Challenge. Submissions now open for groundbreaking student research projects. Deadline, 72 hours away. Jalen froze. Could he? Would they even look at something from a suspended kid from rural Alabama? He thought about Principal Garrett's words. Undermining authority. Disrupting class discussions. Time to reflect on your behavior. Jalen smiled bitterly. Yeah, he'd reflect. By showing exactly what that behavior looked like in code. That night, he gathered every scrap of research, built a concise project report, documented his methods, annotated the lines of machine learning logic that made his anomaly detection model unique. He recorded a short video, too. It wasn't fancy, just him. Sitting on the floor of his bedroom, hoodie pulled low, talking to the camera. My name is Jalen Brooks. I built this because I wanted to solve a problem that matters. I don't have fancy equipment or a lab. Just a laptop and some curiosity. Hope you'll take a look. He hit submit at 2:57 a.m., 3 minutes before the deadline. Then closed his laptop. And slept like he hadn't in weeks. The following Monday, Jalen returned to school. His suspension was technically over, but the sting lingered like a bad bruise. Hallways felt tighter. Conversations died out when he walked past. Some students threw him side glances, half curiosity, half mockery. In physics class, Mr. Connors barely acknowledged him. "Welcome back," the teacher muttered dryly, not making eye contact. Jalen sat at the back, keeping his head low, notebook open, but mostly blank. He'd lost interest in worksheets and quizzes that asked him to explain concepts he'd already surpassed months ago. At lunch, he took his usual seat under the staircase, where most students didn't bother going. He scrolled through his email on his phone, mostly spam and auto promos. Nothing from Harvard, nothing at all. 3 days passed, then 4. Jalen started to wonder if submitting had been a mistake. Maybe Principal Garrett was right. Maybe people like him weren't meant for things like this. Thursday afternoon, the school PA crackled overhead. Principal Garrett's voice came on. "Attention, all students. Let's congratulate our varsity football team for their upcoming playoff game. Go Eagles." Jalen rolled his eyes. Same routine, same priorities. He shoved his books into his bag and left the school early. No one noticed. No one stopped him. That night, as rain tapped softly against his bedroom window, Jalen sat on the floor with his laptop balanced on his knees, mindlessly tweaking parts of his code. not because he had to, but because it was the only thing that still felt like control. Then, ping, a new email notification. Sender: Harvard Youth STEM Challenge Committee. Subject: Congratulations, Jalen Brooks. Selection for National Finalist Interview. Jalen froze. He read the subject line 3 times, then clicked it open. The first paragraph hit him like lightning. Your project has been selected as one of 10 finalists from thousands of nationwide submissions. We were particularly impressed by your originality, problem-solving approach, and technical mastery. We'd like to schedule a virtual interview with you this weekend. Jalen dropped the laptop onto his bed, hands covering his mouth. His heart raced. Harvard, Harvard. He grabbed his phone, texting Maria, his only real friend at school. You're not going to believe this. Her reply came fast. Try me. He called her, voice shaking, words spilling out too fast to control. Maria laughed, screamed, then said, You better flex on all of them now. Jalen smiled. For the first time in weeks, really smiled. But deep down, he wondered how the school would react when they found out. Because Milstone High wasn't ready for this, and neither was Principal Garrett. By Friday morning, word had started to spread. It wasn't Jalen who told people. It was Harvard. The school's main office received an official email, addressed to both Jalen and Principal Garrett, confirming his selection as a finalist. The subject line alone was enough to stir the air. Subject: Coordination Request. Harvard Youth STEM finalist Jalen Brooks, Milstone High School. The secretary, Ms. Lopez, spotted it first. By second period, whispers rippled down the hallways. Did you hear about Jalen? Wait, like Harvard? Isn't he the kid that just got suspended? By third period, Mr. Connors had seen the email too. For the first time in weeks, he glanced at Jalen with something other than irritation, more like disbelief. At lunch, while Jalen sat with earbuds in, scrolling through code on his phone, Principal Garrett's voice came over the intercom. Jalen Brooks, please report to the main office. The entire cafeteria went silent. Jalen stood slowly, stuffing his phone into his pocket. The walk to the office felt like crossing enemy lines. When he entered, Principal Garrett was standing behind his desk, holding a printed copy of the Harvard email. His expression, a mix of confusion, irritation, and something else. Something almost like fear. Care to explain this? Garrett said, holding up the paper. Jalen blinked. Explain what? This email. Harvard? A competition? Some kind of science program? Jalen kept his tone even. It's a national STEM challenge. I submitted my project a few weeks ago. Garrett's eyes narrowed. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Jalen shrugged. I didn't think you'd be interested. Garrett flinched at the answer, but before he could respond, Ms. Lopez poked her head in. Mr. Garrett, there's a reporter from the local paper on line 2. They're asking about Jalen's nomination. Garrett's face paled slightly. Tell them I'll call back, he snapped. Ms. Lopez hesitated. They said it's time-sensitive. They want a quote for the morning edition. Jalen stood silently, watching the entire scene unfold. For the first time ever, Principal Garrett looked cornered. I'll handle it later, Garrett said. After Ms. Lopez left, Garrett turned back to Jalen. Well, he said slowly, smoothing the paper on his desk, it seems we'll need to prepare a statement. Can't have our school looking unprepared when Harvard's involved. Jalen didn't answer. Garrett's voice softened, but it felt forced, calculated. You'll represent Milstone High with pride, I'm sure, he said. Jalen smiled faintly, not because he felt flattered, but because he finally understood something. This wasn't about Garrett suddenly believing in him. It was about optics. Jalen walked out of the office without another word. By the time he reached the end of the hall, students were already gathering in clusters, scrolling through their phones. Someone had screenshotted the email. Maria caught up with him by his locker. "They're acting like they knew you were a genius all along," she said, rolling her eyes. Jalen laughed under his breath. Let them. Because for once, their opinions didn't matter. Harvard had called, and Jalen was answering. The weekend arrived faster than Jalen expected. Saturday morning, he woke before dawn, nerves buzzing like static in his chest. His Harvard finalist interview was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp, virtual via Zoom. He spent the early hours double-checking his slides, practicing answers in front of the bathroom mirror, and running internet speed tests over and over. At 9:30, he logged in early. His mom stood behind him, hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You got this, baby," she whispered. Maria had texted minutes earlier. "Don't forget, they're lucky to hear you, not the other way around." At exactly 9:59, the waiting room opened. 4 people appeared on the screen: 2 professors, a program coordinator, and a former STEM finalist now attending Harvard. They smiled politely. One leaned forward. "Jalen Brooks, correct?" "Yes, sir." "We've been very excited to meet you." The first few questions felt manageable. "What inspired your project?" "How did you overcome technical limitations?" "Where did you learn to build an AI anomaly detector with limited resources?" Jalen answered with calm precision. "I taught myself, mostly online, some from open-source forums, and a lot of trial and error." Nods of approval filled the screen, but halfway through the call, disaster struck. His internet froze, mid-sentence. The spinning buffer icon appeared like a bad joke. "No, no, no," Jalen muttered, scrambling to refresh the connection. He checked the router, rebooted his phone hotspot. Nothing. His heart pounded. Across the screen, the frozen faces of the Harvard panel stayed stuck in pixelated distortion. Jalen's mom rushed in. "What's wrong?" "Network's down," he said breathlessly. Her face paled. "We can go to the diner," she suggested quickly. "They've got Wi-Fi." "No time," Jalen shook his head. "It'll take too long." For a moment, panic clawed at him. Then he remembered something. Last summer, while testing offline functionality for his app, he'd written a simple peer-to-peer backup communication protocol. It was designed for low-bandwidth situations. Primitive, ugly, but functional. Without hesitating, Jalen pulled up the local server file, copied his slide deck into the codebase, and fired off a compressed version through a separate emergency SMTP relay script he'd hacked together months ago. He then grabbed his phone and texted the program coordinator directly. "Internet down. Sending project details and pre-recorded responses now. Please check email. Can follow up by phone if needed." Less than 2 minutes later, his mom's cell rang. Jalen picked up. It was the coordinator. "We got your files," she said, sounding both surprised and impressed. "You improvised an SMTP failover in real time?" Jalen let out a shaky breath. "Yeah, I guess I did." On the other end, laughter. Warm, genuine. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we're looking for." Jalen closed his eyes, letting the adrenaline wash over him. When the call ended, he sank onto the couch. His mom sat beside him, wrapping him in a tight hug. "You didn't just survive that," she whispered. "You owned it." Jalen smiled, and for the first time, he believed it. Monday morning, Milstone High felt different. Jalen could feel the stares the second he walked through the front doors. Students whispered in hallways. Teachers paused mid-conversation as he passed. Even Mr. Connors, his physics teacher, gave him a nod of acknowledgement, something unheard of just a week ago. By third period, Jalen understood why. Printed across the school's website homepage, in bold capital letters, was a headline: Milstone High Senior named Harvard STEM Genius. Below, it was a full article, written like the school had nurtured him into success all along. Phrases like, "Our commitment to academic excellence." Another example of Milstone's legacy of producing outstanding scholars. With guidance from our dedicated staff, Jalen stared at the screen in disbelief. Guidance? Legacy? This was the same school that suspended him for showing off. The article didn't mention the suspension, didn't mention how Principal Garrett tried to silence him, didn't mention the nights he stayed up alone, troubleshooting code on a barely working laptop. At lunch, Maria found him sitting under the old oak tree behind the gym. "Hey," she said, sliding down onto the grass beside him. "You saw the article?" he asked. "Yeah, it's classic." Jalen let out a hollow laugh. "They're acting like they built me." Maria nudged him. "You built you." Just then, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A voice on the other end. "Jalen Brooks? This is Dr. Patel from the Harvard Youth STEM program. Congratulations. You've been selected as one of 3 full scholarship recipients for our summer research fellowship." Jalen's heart stopped. "We'll be sending formal paperwork later this week," Dr. Patel continued, "but we wanted you to hear it directly." Jalen blinked hard, unable to speak. "Are you still there?" Dr. Patel asked. "Yeah," he whispered, "I'm here." After the call ended, Jalen sat there for a long moment, staring at the sky. Maria, noticing the change in his expression, asked softly, "Good news?" He nodded, still processing. "Full ride," he finally said. "Summer fellowship." Harvard. Maria's face broke into a grin. "Jalen, that's huge." He smiled, but then his gaze drifted back toward the school building. "I wonder if they'll want me to do a photo op next," he said, voice tinged with dry humor. "Probably," Maria shrugged. "But let them." "Why?" "Because every kid sitting in a classroom right now, feeling invisible, feeling like they don't belong, needs to see this, needs to see you." Jalen considered that, and for the first time, he didn't feel like shrinking from the spotlight. Maybe, just this once, he let them watch. By Friday, it was official. Milstone High planned a full school assembly to celebrate Jalen's remarkable achievement. Flyers went up. Teachers rehearsed their speeches. Even Principal Garrett seemed unusually chipper, greeting students in the hallways like a politician mid-campaign. Jalen sat in the back of a homeroom, staring at the printed program schedule. 10 a.m., opening remarks by Principal Garrett. 10 a.m., recognition of academic excellence, Jalen Brooks. 10:10 a.m., student speech, Jalen Brooks. He swallowed hard. They expected him to smile, nod politely, and thank the school for its support. But that wasn't the truth. When the auditorium filled, students shuffled into seats, buzzing with curiosity. Parents had been invited too. Local reporters stood near the side aisles, cameras poised. Maria sat in the second row, giving him a silent thumbs up. Principal Garrett took the stage first. "We're gathered here today to honor one of Milstone High's finest," Garrett began, smiling broadly. "Jalen Brooks has shown us all what determination, grit, and Milstone spirit can achieve." Jalen bit the inside of his cheek. "Milstone spirit? The same spirit that suspended him?" Garrett continued. "Jalen's success is a testament to what happens when educators and students work together toward greatness." There it was, the revisionist history. Jalen's name was met with polite applause. Garrett waved him toward the podium. As Jalen walked up, heart pounding, he heard whispers from the crowd. "Is he nervous? Bet he's going to say something nice about Garrett." "Let's see if he mentions the suspension." Jalen stepped up to the mic. The room quieted. He looked out over the sea of faces. Students who'd ignored him, teachers who'd doubted him, an entire system that once tried to silence him. He took a slow, steady breath. "I'm grateful for this opportunity," he began. Principal Garrett smiled wide from his seat on stage. "But not for the reasons you might think." The smile faltered. "I'm not standing here today because this school believed in me. I'm here because when I was told to sit down, I stood up anyway." A ripple ran through the audience. "When I was suspended for showing off, I kept learning. When I was called disruptive for answering questions, I kept asking more." A few teachers shifted uncomfortably. "And when I felt invisible, I reminded myself that brilliance doesn't need permission." Maria clapped first, once, loudly. Then others joined in, then more. By the time Jalen stepped back from the mic, the room was on its feet. Principal Garrett's face stayed frozen, his applause mechanical and slow. But Jalen didn't care, because for once the applause wasn't for the school. It was for him, and it was real. Summer arrived, and with it, a one-way ticket to Cambridge, Massachusetts. Jalen stood at the gates of Harvard University, backpack slung low, eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and quiet pride. Red brick buildings towered around him. The same kid who'd once been suspended for showing off now walked through halls lined with Nobel laureates, Pulitzer winners, and global thinkers. His first day at the Youth STEM Fellowship felt surreal. During orientation, students shared where they came from. Private schools in New York, tech academies in Silicon Valley, international science programs from Europe and Asia. When it was Jalen's turn, he stood slowly. "I'm from Milstone, Alabama," he said simply. "And I taught myself." The room fell silent for a beat. Then applause. Not pity applause, real recognition. In the following weeks, Jalen worked alongside PhD candidates, attended guest lectures from world-renowned physicists, and presented his anomaly detection model in front of researchers who'd helped map gravitational waves. One afternoon, during a lunch Q&A, a visiting professor from the MIT Media Lab pulled Jalen aside. "You ever thought about publishing this?" she asked, pointing to his code summary. Jalen blinked. "Publishing, like an academic journal?" She smiled. "Exactly like that." Later that night, as he sat on a bench near Harvard Yard, Jalen opened his phone and scrolled through old photos. One from his bedroom back home, faded chalkboard, messy handwriting, and a suspended school notice tacked to the wall. He smiled. Then he texted Maria, "I don't think I'll ever forget Milstone, but for the first time, it doesn't define me." Her reply came seconds later. "It never did. You just finally believe it now." Jalen leaned back, looking up at the night sky, full of stars, full of possibilities. And somewhere deep inside, he made himself a promise. This was only the beginning. Because for every kid still sitting in the back of a classroom, for every student being told they were too much, Jalen Brooks was going to prove that genius has no zip code, and no one gets to decide where brilliance belongs. Jalen Brooks didn't fight back with anger. He answered with action, with code. With brilliance no suspension letter could erase. His story reminds us, sometimes, the kids they try to silence are the ones who end up changing everything. If you've ever doubted your voice, or wondered if your work would ever be seen. Let Jalen's journey remind you. Keep learning. Keep creating. Keep believing your time will come. And if stories like this stay with you, subscribe and turn on notifications so we'll have the encouragement to keep finding and telling more stories that inspire. Stories that deserve to be heard.